6'3", Bay Area. Swear to Bob. A rapper in Vegas telling a stranger's chat that his verse is worth a gazillion trillion billion $1 million, while his rumored girlfriend is one room over, punching in on a track she wrote herself. And somewhere in Chino, a man named Jonathan Porter is watching the whole thing accumulate on his timeline, 38 days after walking out of prison. Something about this doesn't add up. Or maybe it adds up too clean. Real quick, before we get into it, y'all know the drill. Smash that like, hit subscribe, ring the bell, because what Kai just said on that stream, we're gonna dissect it word by word. And trust me, it's better than the surface read. Friday night, July 10th, 2026. Jaidyn Alexis, Blueface ex-fiancée and mother of his 2 kids, Javon and Journey, pulls into a Vegas rental. Her ride or die Sam isn't with her yet. Her hype man of the moment, a Fairfield, California rapper named Kai Pearson, better known as Kai Bandz, is pulling up in a black whip to take her to a studio session. The stream is live. The mic isn't. Chat is losing it. And somewhere between the crimping iron, the tequila shots, and a fake-out drop of somebody's phone case in a hallway, this whole thing tips from friendly collab into something else. That's the raw material. Now watch this. But before we watch it, pause and lock in the room. Because context is everything with this one. Vegas isn't neutral ground for Jaidyn. This is the same city where, prior TMZ reporting, Blueface legal storylines have been chewed up and spit back out for years. The gambling clips, the domestic incidents, the ex-fiancé footage that made her a household name for reasons she never asked for. Vegas is where Blueface public persona was manufactured, weaponized, and eventually caged. So the fact that Jaidyn's chosen Vegas as the launch pad for whatever this new chapter is, that's not a coincidence of tour routing. That's territorial. She's not going to Vegas for the Strip. She's going to Vegas because Vegas is where his footprint is deepest, and she's about to stamp hers right on top of it. The rental itself matters too. Chat clocked it in real time. It wasn't a suite at a headliner casino. It wasn't a Fontainebleau or a Wynn villa. It was a private rental. The kind of setup you book when you want Livestream lighting, an open living room, easy in and out for a rotating cast, and, most importantly, plausible deniability about who slept where. A hotel suite forces the story. A rental blurs it. You can pass the same doorway 4 times on camera and never confirm which bedroom is whose. And that plausible deniability, as we're about to see, is a feature of this rollout, not a bug. Now the raw material. Now watch this. Let's just let the man speak first. No spin. Just his exact words on that stream. Receipts attached where it matters. On how he feels about Jaidyn. Y'all know how I feel off with joy. I ain't going to lie. We be vibing. We be around. We making bangers. We making money. We making memories. Vibing. Around. Bangers. Notice what's not in that sentence. No, my girl. No, my baby. No, shorty. No possessive language of any kind. In a genre where possessive language is practically punctuation, where every other bar out of every other rapper's mouth is my this and my that, the absence is loud. He picked verbs that describe coworkers. Vibing is what you do at an office party. Around is where somebody stands when they're not committed to being with you. Bangers, money, memories. That's a business partnership with a highlight reel. If you handed that quote to a linguist and stripped the names off, they'd tell you it describes a creative collaborator, not a partner. Kai didn't slip. Kai picked those words. And on a live stream, when a man knows the algorithm is listening, word choice is the tell. On whether he's taking her on a date. Yeah, I told y'all I'ma take her on a date. But if she want to go to the club and be a hot little mama, then we're gonna go to the club and let her be a hot little mama. He said yes. Kind of. Then he swerved. And the swerve is the story. Because hot little mama isn't the language of a man escorting his lady somewhere quiet. That's the language of a man presenting a woman to a room. A date is a private commitment. The club is a public performance. He answered a private question with a public answer. That's not a mistake. That's a preview of the entire operation. Everything about this dynamic gets outsourced to the audience. Nothing stays between the two of them. Even the definition of what they are is being crowdsourced live in the comments. On how they met, booked together at a bowling alley/club in Santa Rosa. They booked me and her for event. She came from LA, and I'm in the Bay. We popped up in like Santa Rosa. We did the event, we clicking. That's the origin story. A business booking. Not a mutual friend. Not a DM slide. A promoter's invoice. Which matters more than it sounds. Promoter bookings in that mid-tier Bay Area circuit, the bowling alley/club circuit, pay in the low four figures for headliners of Kai's tier. Higher for Jaidyn given her name recognition. 2 artists on one flyer means one promoter footing both bills. 1 dressing room, 1 green room, 1 afterparty. In that scene, we clicking after a booked event is the industry equivalent of an office fling. It's the most common origin story in independent hip-hop. And it's also the one that most reliably ends in either a track or a lawsuit. Sometimes both. And then this, casually, mid-ramble unprompted. I'm my own bro. I'm self-made, self-paid. I don't got to mention no expletive. Bro. That's what y'all failed to realize, bro. I mentioned me first. Him bringing that up on his own on somebody else's stream. Nobody in chat asked him about mentioning anybody. He volunteered it. File that away. Volunteer confessions are the loudest confessions in this game. When a rapper defends himself against an accusation nobody made, it means the accusation is already in his head. Somebody, somewhere, a group chat, a comment section, a producer, has already told him he's riding Jaidyn's coattails, and the defense arrived on stream fully formed, which means it was rehearsed. You don't rehearse a rebuttal to an argument you've never heard. Meanwhile, Jaidyn's Spotify page is quietly telling its own story. Their track Fine S.H.T. sitting at just under 11,000 streams, while her old Barbie remix, feat. Blueface, still shows 3 million. That gap matters. We'll get there. Wild. Alright, let me connect some dots, because if you look at the calendar, this whole thing has choreography. November 3rd, 2025. Blueface walks out of prison after nearly 2 years, per XXL's coverage that Monday. Free man. IG Live within hours. And per TMZ, the very first storm he's dealing with post-release is the Cryptix versus Jaidyn dynamic. Not new music. Not tour dates. Domestic wreckage. Think about how strange that framing is. A man does nearly 2 years, comes home, and the lead on his release day coverage is not what he plans to record, not who he plans to sign, not what he learned inside. It's which woman he's going to fight with next. That framing didn't invent itself. It was preloaded. Every outlet knew before he stepped outside that the audience for a Blueface comeback wasn't a music audience. It was a domestic drama audience. And when your comeback is pre-framed as domestic drama, your ex-fiancée isn't a bystander. She's a co-lead, whether she wanted the role or not. Fast forward. Late January 2026. Jaidyn is on a live saying Blueface told her Cryptix, who reportedly was living out of her car at the time, is better than her. That clip goes everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean the reposts hit numbers that Jaidyn's own music releases have never touched, which is the cruelest math in this whole story. Her pain outperformed her product. The version of her that was hurting got more engagement than the version of her that was creating. Any artist who watches that math for long enough starts to make decisions accordingly. You don't have to accuse anyone of anything to notice that the pipeline from humiliation clip to career leverage is the shortest pipeline in this industry, and Jaidyn has been walking it, whether by choice or by circumstance, since 2021. March 2026. Jaidyn steps out publicly with Kai Bandz and friends for a neighborhood concert. That's the first time their names get chained together in the algorithm. And once names get chained in the algorithm, they don't come unchained without a fight. TikTok and Instagram's recommendation systems build cross-entity graphs. If you engage with content about person A, you get served content about person B if the two co-occur enough. From March forward, every fan searching Jaidyn started getting served Kai. Every fan searching Kai started getting served Jaidyn. Neither of them had to do anything else for the machine to start doing the work. That March appearance wasn't a debut. It was a seed. June 22nd, 2026. Their daughter Journey graduates preschool. June 25th, 2026. Fine S.H.T. drops on all platforms. 3 days. 3 days between a milestone that publicly reminds the internet that Jaidyn is a mother, Blueface child's mother specifically, and a single that publicly presents her as a woman with a new creative partner. If a screenwriter pitched you that pacing, you tell them it's too tight. Real life doesn't script that clean. And now, July 10th, Vegas. Studio session. EP announcement dropped midstream. We got a EP coming real soon. On Bob though. Wait. Back up. The single dropped 15 days before he told a live audience an EP was on the way. That's not artists catching lightning. That's a rollout. Somebody sat in a room and mapped this out on a whiteboard. 15 days between single and EP announcement is textbook independent artist strategy. The window is deliberate, long enough for the single to accumulate DSP data. Spotify's algorithmic playlisting decisions happen roughly at the 2-week mark, and short enough that the announcement rides the tail of the single's initial press cycle instead of starting a new cycle from cold. Any manager who's run more than 3 rollouts knows that 15 to 20-day window. You don't stumble into it. You land on it. And here's the part that actually made me stop and reread the transcript. Jaidyn, on that same stream, says Kai paid her rent. Not took her to dinner. Not sent flowers. Paid rent. They've never been on what she'd call a real date. But somebody's covering somebody's housing. That's not a courtship phase. That's an arrangement phase. And it's happening while Blueface, the father of her kids, freshly out, sits within earshot of every algorithm push. The stagecraft is loud, and the rent reveal is the loudest note in the whole score. Because think about who benefits from that detail being public. Not Kai. A man who's just paid another artist's rent doesn't usually want the receipt broadcast. It turns a private gesture into a public flex, which cheapens it, or worse, invites the he bought her narrative he then has to defend against. And clearly not Jaidyn in any traditional dating sense either. Because being publicly identified as a woman whose rent is being covered by a man who isn't officially her boyfriend puts her in a narrative box she has to spend the next 6 months climbing out of. So who does benefit? The story does. The rollout does. The mystery does. The rent detail exists to make the audience ask the exact question we're asking right now, which means the audience asking it is the point, not a side effect. Let me pull the lens tight on 3 specific moments from that stream, because the surface read misses them. The car pickup. Kai pulls up. Jaidyn walks out. He doesn't get out of the car. She has to find him. You see me? You see them on the side. And open her own door. On stream. In real time. Chat clocked it. So did I. Y'all can call it modern. I'll call it what it is. A coworker pickup, not a boyfriend pickup. There's a difference. Your body knows the difference. Her body knew. Because in the wider archive of celebrity relationship footage, and I've watched more of it than I'd like to admit, the door-opening moment is the single most reliable body language tell in the entire genre. Not the kiss. Not the handhold. The door. A man who considers himself in a relationship with a woman opens her door in front of a camera every single time, without exception, because the camera is exactly the moment that muscle memory kicks in. A man who considers himself in a situation with a woman does not. Kai did not. And he's not a man who's uneducated about cameras. He's an artist with an active Instagram presence, an active TikTok presence, a full YouTube interview presence. He knows what cameras record. He made a choice. The mic being off. They set up an entire live stream, hit the studio, and the mics between them aren't on for the ride over. She's cranking the volume to max. He's playing music over the top of the audio the audience is straining to hear. And nobody notices for what feels like 10 minutes. Y'all, if this is a couple in the honeymoon phase of anything, they're gonna want people to hear the flirting. That's how it works. Every parasocial rollout in the last 5 years, from the influencer couples to the label-manufactured pairings, has understood that muffled audio kills the ship. So either this team is incompetent, and they're clearly not, because the visuals for Fine SHT are handled by a real director per the promo posts, or the muffled audio is the point. Give the audience just enough to speculate, never enough to disprove. Compare it to any other live stream native pairing from the last 3 years, and the contrast is stark. The couples who want to ship confirm it with clarity, clean audio, direct-to-camera captions, matching outfits. The kiss cam moment stage managed to hit at exactly the right beat in the stream. The pairings that want the ship speculated, the ones that need the audience doing the work of arguing about whether it's real, muffle the audio, dodge the direct question, keep the framing wide, and let the comments do the storytelling. This stream, by every measurable indicator, is in Category 2. And Category 2 is where the actual money is, because a confirmed ship gets 1 week of press. A speculated ship gets 6 months. The self-made, self-paid monologue. He goes on for a full minute about being in his own lane, not mentioning anybody, being independent. Kai is on record. IDYS interview earlier this year, talking about turning down major label money to stay independent. That interview also touches on him turning down a $50,000 TikTok offer and later making $250,000 off the same song. So the independence talk is real. It's on brand. It's been his whole pitch for over a year. But dropping it on Jaidyn's stream, on the exact night the EP announcement lands, reads less like a personal creed and more like a positioning statement. He's making sure the audience knows, whatever this is with her, he's not riding her wave. If anything, she's on his. Which is interesting, because Kai's Instagram sits at 126K followers. Jaidyn's reach dwarfs that. Somebody's riding somebody's wave. And the guy insisting he isn't, that's the guy who is. I had to read that part 3 times. And then a 4th. Because the more you sit with it, the more the math becomes impossible to ignore. Follower counts aren't the whole picture. But the whole picture doesn't help Kai's case either. Jaidyn's audience is a Blueface adjacent audience, one that has been trained by 5 straight years of viral moments to click on anything with her name attached. Kai's audience is a Bay Area independent rap audience, real, loyal, but a fraction of the scale. When he says he's independent, he's telling the truth. When he implies he's the wave and she's the surfer, he's telling a different truth than the numbers support. And the fact that he had to say it out loud, unprompted, on her stream, is proof that he already knows the numbers don't support it either. Small hidden detail worth flagging before we move on. The phrase on Bob, that Kai keeps looping back to. That's a Bay Area verbal signature, not a Jaidyn signature. Her older records lean LA in cadence and slang. His whole delivery leans Bay. Every time he says on Bob, on her stream, on her platform, in front of her audience, he's importing his linguistic territory into hers. Small thing. But that's how territory gets marked. One phrase at a time. Watch the comments. By the end of that stream, the fans are echoing on Bob back at each other. He didn't just show up on our platform. He colonized a corner of it. Different outlets are telling 3 different versions of the story right now, and it's worth naming them. The Shade Room and its orbit. The reposts of Jaidyn's older reactions to Blueface and Cryptix hanging out are framing this as the revenge arc. Jaidyn moves on. Jaidyn thrives. Blueface loses. That's the frame that plays best with the female-majority black culture blog audience, the audience that has been rooting for Jaidyn since the first Cryptix altercation. Clips hit the timeline in 2022. It's a satisfying frame. It has a hero. It has a villain. It has an arc. It's also the frame that requires the least investigation, because she moved on and she's happy. Is a story that ends itself. No follow-up questions needed. Which is exactly why that lane is so populated. It's cheap content that engages instantly and never asks you to think about it twice. Hot new hip-hop and the harder news lane, where you get pieces like the Cryptix Blueface Jaidyn triangle coverage, are framing it as domestic saga. Kai is a supporting character in a long-running soap. The music is background noise. This lane is where the older audience engagement lives, the demographic that's been following the story arc since Blueface's first viral moment years ago. To this audience, Kai isn't a new artist. He's the next chapter of a saga that started long before he showed up. Which means Kai doesn't get evaluated on his music, his craft, or his career trajectory. He gets evaluated on how he fits into a story that isn't his. That's a rough position for any artist to be in, and Kai's team has to know it. Which is another reason the self-made, self-paid monologue was so pointed. He's trying to yank himself out of that supporting character frame in real time. Whether it worked is a different question. Then you've got the fan clip circuit. TikToks like the one where chat put Jaidyn on the spot about going on a real date. And she said yes without hesitation, framing this as a slow burn love story. 2 artists, 1 studio. Chemistry blooming in real time. The fan clip circuit is where the youngest slice of the audience lives. Gen Z. TikTok native. Parasocial primed. To them, Blueface is background lore. Cryptix is background lore. The story they're watching is only Kai and Jaidyn. No history, no baggage, no context. Just two people flirting on a stream, and their job as viewers is to ship it, GIF it, remix it, and push the algorithm to serve more of it. This is the audience that turned a rumored couple into a franchise. Every stream, every clip, every DM screenshot becomes canon. And once the fan clip circuit locks in on a pairing, breaking the pairing gets expensive, because the audience owns the ship at that point, and any move that contradicts it triggers backlash, which means both Kai and Jaidyn are, from this point forward, playing to an audience that expects a specific outcome. That's leverage in one direction and a cage in the other. The counter-argument I keep seeing in comments. Y'all are hating. They're just two young artists making music. Let them cook. And honestly, steelman it for a second. Kai's independent. He's got his own bag. Jaidyn's got her own catalog and her own audience. They booked a real event, made a real song, released it on real DSPs. Maybe the collab is just a collab, and the paid rent thing is just what generous friends do. Maybe. But here's where that read collapses. Real collabs don't require a live stream every step of the way. Real collabs don't need the audience present for the pickup, the ride, the studio door, the toast, the vending machine bit. Real collabs don't have one artist announcing an EP on the other artist's platform while she's in the booth and can't push back. There's a version of this that's organic. This ain't it. And the pickup to booth pipeline being live streamed isn't a small thing. It's the entire operational difference between a creative rollout and a narrative rollout. Creative rollouts protect the music. They keep the artist off camera during the moments where the audience might get distracted from the songs. Narrative rollouts protect the story. They put the artist on camera during the moments where the audience is supposed to get distracted, because the distraction is the product. What we watched on July 10th was a narrative rollout. The music is the receipt. The story is the merchandise. Here's what I think is actually happening. And I'm not 100 on this. Call it 75. But let me walk through it. This isn't a PR relationship in the traditional sense. Nobody signed a contract that says pretend to date for 8 weeks. What this looks like to me is something messier and more modern. A soft launch partnership where both sides get exactly what they need without either of them ever having to define it. Kai gets a bump. He gets algorithmic access to Jaidyn's audience, an audience that's been trained by 5 years of Blueface content to eat up every romantic subplot involving her. His stream numbers, his follower count, his Spotify monthly listeners, all of it lifts when her name is next to his. That $50,000 TikTok offer he turned down. Post Jaidyn, that number has a different zero on the end. And that's the arithmetic that makes this work for him. In independent hip-hop, the ceiling on brand deals is set by cross-audience reach, not by album sales. A rapper with 126K followers who only reaches Bay Area independent rap listeners gets one bracket of offers. A rapper with 126K followers who has visibility into a national female-driven Blueface-adjacent audience gets a completely different bracket. He didn't need to gain followers to change his math. He just needed the type of visibility to shift. Being seen next to Jaidyn does that in a way that no amount of solo grinding would in the same time frame. That's not cynical. That's just how the modern rap visibility economy works. And any manager who isn't leveraging it isn't doing their job. Jaidyn gets narrative sovereignty. For years her story has been Blueface baby mama. Every headline chained her identity to a man who's now been to prison, publicly compared her to another woman on record, and, per her own words, hasn't held up his end as a father. Being seen with Kai, younger, independent, financially self-sufficient enough to cover rent, flips the frame. She's not the one waiting anymore. She's the one being pursued. That's not a relationship. That's a rebrand. And a rebrand at Jaidyn's specific moment in her arc is worth more than a hit single. Because she's at the exact career junction where every female artist attached to a controversial male star has to make a call. Do you spend the rest of your career being his ex, or do you invest in a new frame hard enough that the public updates your file? Some artists never make that pivot and spend 20 years being introduced as somebody's ex on radio drops. The ones who do make it, and there are examples in every era of hip-hop, though I won't name drop and turn this into a compare and contrast, always do it the same way. They pair up publicly with somebody new enough that the audience can't immediately place them, artistic enough that the pairing has a legitimate creative reason to exist, and independent enough that the union can't be dismissed as a label play. Kai checks all three boxes, almost too cleanly. The rent situation is the tell, because in a normal romantic arc, that detail stays private for months. In a rebrand arc, it leaks strategically, from her mouth, on her platform, on her timing. And the reason I keep landing on 75 and not 100 is because there's a version of this where they actually do like each other. Genuine chemistry can coexist with strategic rollout. Both things can be true. Two people can vibe, and their teams can be running a playbook. This industry does that math every day. That's the part that gets lost in most breakdowns of this kind of situation. The assumption that strategy and feelings are mutually exclusive. They're not. They almost never are. Some of the most iconic rap relationships of the last 20 years started as strategic bookings and ended as marriages. And some of them started as genuine crushes and ended in labels manufacturing the entire second act. The reality is layered. Two artists can meet at a paid gig, actually catch a real vibe, and then have their team sit down and say, let's map how we roll this out so it also serves both careers. That's not fake. It's just professional. What's happening between Kai and Jaidyn is likely closer to that hybrid than to either extreme, which is exactly why it's so hard to read from the outside, because both sides of it are simultaneously true. The countercamp says, y'all always project, let a black woman have a soft life. Fair, but a soft life doesn't require a live stream at every checkpoint. A soft life happens off camera. What we're watching is a product, and products have release schedules. And products have expiration dates, which is the harder truth nobody in the comments wants to sit with. Rollouts of this shape have a natural half-life somewhere between 8 and 20 weeks. After that, the audience needs a new beat, a proposal, a breakup, a fight, a baby, a diss track, something. Or the engagement curve flattens and the algorithm redirects to the next couple. If Kai and Jaidyn are actually running a soft launch partnership, whoever manages it knows this. Which means the next dramatic beat, whatever it turns out to be, is already scheduled somewhere in someone's Notion doc, waiting for its release window. The other thing that keeps me at 75, Blueface silence. He's out. He's active on socials. He's been dealing with the Krazian situation for 8 months straight, and on the loudest night of his ex-fiancee's public reinvention, with a new man announcing an EP on her stream in a hotel where they might or might not stay together. He's saying nothing. That's not defeat. That's not indifference either. That's somebody waiting. Waiting is the most misunderstood move in this whole ecosystem, because internet culture reads silence as loss. Silence means you got clapped. Silence means you have no comeback. Silence means the other side won. But in the actual pattern of high-visibility rap beefs and post-relationship media wars, silence right after your ex's rollout is the strongest opening move you can make. It denies the story oxygen at the exact moment the story needs oxygen most. It forces the audience to keep watching her content, to figure out what's happening, which quietly reinforces her role as the main character of a story rather than the main character of her own. And it saves your own ammunition for the exact moment when the audience is starting to get bored of her rollout and hungry for a shift. That moment always comes. Blueface has been in this game long enough to know exactly when it lands. If a countermove drops, watch for it to hit between week 6 and 10 of the EP's rollout cycle, right when the initial press exhausts itself and the algorithm needs new fuel. The EP. That's the first shoe to drop. Kai basically committed to it live. We got an EP coming real soon, which means we're probably looking at a September-October release. Watch how the singles roll. If they drop with matching visuals, matching outfits, matching press cycles, we know exactly what we're looking at. If Kai releases a solo single in between, and it charts higher, then fine SH. T did. Expect the pairing to quietly cool, while both sides pretend nothing happened. Watch the visuals in particular. That's where the tell lives. Matching color palettes across two artists' visual content is the modern equivalent of an engagement announcement. It says the teams are coordinated, the creative directors are talking, and the rollout has a shared style guide. Independent artists don't spend money on shared style guides for casual collabs. They spend that money on projects they expect to earn back on. If the fine SH.T follow-up drops with visuals that mirror Jaidyn's palette from earlier this year, if the wardrobe, The color grading, the graphic design language all match. This stops being speculation and starts being confirmation. If instead Kai's visuals go somewhere completely different, Bay Area streetwear palette, no Jaidyn crossover, aesthetic distance, then this is a one-off collab that got hot on stream, and the EP is really a Kai solo project with Jaidyn on a guest slot. Two very different futures. The visual receipts will tell you which one is real inside the first 4 weeks. The Blueface counter move is the second shoe. He's been out for 8 months and hasn't dropped a full project. Don't be shocked when he announces one within 30 days of Kai and Jaidyn's EP. Not because he wants to compete with Kai, because he wants to remind the algorithm that he still owns the biggest emotional lane in this whole ecosystem. Watch for a feature that reads as a response. Watch for a lyric that gets clipped. He knows exactly what he's doing. The next window belongs to him if he wants it. And notice how none of this requires him to attack Kai directly. That's the part rookies miss. In modern rap-adjacent media wars, the direct attack is the weakest move. It validates the target. It gives the target free press. And it locks you into a beef arc that eats months of your career. The strong move is a parallel release that competes for the same attention window without acknowledging the target's existence. If Blueface drops a project in early November that happens to include a track about fatherhood, custody, or being lied on by exes, none of it naming anyone, that's the counter move. The audience will do the naming for him. He never has to say a word, and that plausible deniability is worth 100 diss tracks. Also watch the Cryptix variable. She's been the wild card in every phase of this saga, and there's no reason to assume she's a passive observer of Jaidyn's rollout either. If Cryptix drops content, a stream, a track, an interview, in the same window as Kai and Jaidyn's EP, that's a three-way collision that doubles the drama surface for everyone involved. And if Cryptix stays silent too, then you've got a coordinated silence from both of Blueface's most associated women, which itself is a kind of statement. Silence from one person is a mood. Silence from two, at the same time, on the same story, starts to look like a signal. And then, 5 years out, this is the part nobody's talking about. The residue of this specific playbook is what changes hip-hop. Because what Kai and Jaidyn are running here, whether they know it or not, is a template. Independent rapper plus high-visibility baby mama, plus Livestream native rollout, plus strategic ambiguity equals a rollout model that requires zero label money and zero traditional PR. If this EP charts even respectably, every mid-tier artist with a phone is gonna try to run the same play. The industry residue isn't the songs, it's the method. And the losers in that world are the traditional labels, because they can't own a rollout that lives entirely on somebody else's Twitch chat. Think about what that actually costs the majors. A traditional label rollout for a mid-tier rap artist runs anywhere from 6 figures to low 7 figures. You're paying for PR, for radio, for playlist placements, for photo shoots, for music videos, for tour support, for merch runs, for the entire ecosystem of stuff that used to be required to break an act. What Kai and Jaidyn are running requires none of that. The photo shoots are Livestream screenshots. The PR is TikTok reposts. The radio is Spotify's algorithmic playlisting, which triggers off engagement metrics that Livestream ships generate for free. The tour support is whatever bowling alley/club circuit already exists in each region. The merch runs are pre-orders through Shopify integrations. Total cost of the rollout, if I had to guess, under $10,000, most of it studio time and gas. That's not a competitor to the majors. That's an existential threat to the majors' entire business model. If the play works, and the play might work, that's the part that keeps me up. Because if it works, if Fine SHT and its EP break past 250K streams collectively, if the visuals get shared enough, if the shipped narrative outperforms the music in engagement, every independent artist watching is going to write the same page in their playbook. And in 3 years, the majors are going to be pitching acts who don't need pitching. The center of gravity in independent hip-hop is going to shift from craft-first artists to narrative-first artists. Some of that shift is already happening. This EP might just accelerate it. Watch that space. The soft launch romance is about to become the new mixtape. That's the read. That's the whole thing. If y'all rocked with this breakdown, the one you're not getting on the timeline, not getting from the news sites, not getting from anywhere else? Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop your take in the comments. PR play or real feelings? Rebrand or romance? Both? Neither? I want the war in the comments. Fame Cryptix out.